Ethan Carter was the epitome of success, a self-made millionaire whose name was synonymous with ambition and accomplishment. From humble beginnings, he climbed to the top, building a reputation as one of the most influential figures in the tech world. His life was a carefully curated picture of triumph, and his upcoming wedding to socialite Vanessa Monroe promised to be the crowning jewel of his achievements. But behind the glittering facade of Ethan's life lay a story he had long buried. Among the many gilded invitations he sent out was one addressed to Grace Turner, his ex-girlfriend from his university days. While the world saw Vanessa as his perfect match, Grace had once been his anchor, the person who believed in him before the world knew his name. Ethan Carter grew up in a small industrial town where life was a constant struggle. His father worked grueling shifts at a factory, while his mother juggled multiple part-time jobs to make ends meet. Ethan's childhood was marked by the sight of his parents sacrificing everything for their family, igniting in him a fierce determination to escape the cycle of poverty. From a young age, Ethan stood out for his relentless drive and exceptional work ethic. He spent hours poring over textbooks, viewing every test as a stepping stone toward a brighter future. His hard work paid off when he earned a full scholarship to a prestigious university. There, he proved himself not just through his sharp intellect, but also through an unyielding resolve to succeed. University life, however, was far from easy. Ethan was haunted by the fear of failure, spending most of his time in the library or working part-time jobs to support himself. His dream of escaping poverty soon evolved into a larger ambition, to build a tech company that could revolutionize the way people lived and worked. It was during these formative years that the idea for an e-commerce platform first took root in Ethan's mind. After graduating, Ethan decided to risk it all. He launched his startup from a cramped apartment, armed with nothing but an old laptop and a whiteboard filled with scribbled ideas and diagrams. The early years were grueling. Countless sleepless nights, repeated setbacks, and financial strain tested his resolve. But Ethan never wavered. His unrelenting efforts eventually bore fruit when his company began to take off, attracting investors and quickly becoming a household name in the tech industry. Today, Ethan is not only a millionaire but also a symbol of resilience and ambition, a man admired for his talent and determination to rise above his humble beginnings. During his challenging university years, Ethan Carter met Grace Turner, and his life was forever changed. Grace was a passionate young artist with a free spirit and an optimistic outlook on life. Her paintings told stories of hope and resilience, qualities Ethan admired deeply but had never believed he possessed himself. They first met at an art exhibit on campus, where Ethan was captivated by Grace's work. Her paintings weren't just artistic. They reflected a strong belief in the beauty of imperfections. This was in stark contrast to Ethan's pragmatic nature, but it was precisely this difference that drew them together. Their love blossomed naturally, as if they completed each other. While Ethan was steadfast and disciplined, Grace brought lightness and a sense of balance to his life. For Grace, Ethan wasn't just a supportive partner, he was also someone who inspired her to pursue her creative dreams without hesitation. Their bond grew stronger as Ethan began his entrepreneurial journey. Those early days were fraught with challenges, but Grace was always by his side, supporting him in every way she could. She took on extra shifts at her part-time jobs to cover expenses and allowed Ethan the freedom to focus on building his company. Their tiny apartment became a hub of dreams, filled with Ethan's ambitious plans scrawled on whiteboards and Grace's vibrant artwork adorning the walls. Despite the chaos of their lives, they shared a common goal: building a future that blended Ethan's ambition with Grace's creative aspirations. However, the differences in how they approached life, combined with mounting pressure, began to create cracks in their seemingly perfect relationship, cracks they hadn't yet realized would grow wider. As Ethan's company began to grow, so did the demands of his work. He spent long hours at investor meetings, networking events, and working late into the night. Slowly but surely, all of his focus shifted to the success of his business, leaving Grace feeling increasingly neglected. Grace longed for the days when they would share their dreams with each other. But now, Ethan seemed consumed by his business plans and profit margins. She tried to reconnect, urging him to spend more time with her and prioritize their relationship. However, Ethan often reacted defensively, mistaking her concerns for a lack of support. Their arguments became more frequent, each one driving a deeper wedge between them. In one particularly heated exchange, Grace accused Ethan of putting his ambition above their relationship. Ethan, angered by her words, accused her of holding him back. The fight ended with Grace walking away, heartbroken, and Ethan retreating further into his work. In the aftermath of their breakup, Ethan buried himself in his company, trying to fill the void Grace had left with success. He convinced himself that achieving his dreams would heal the pain, but deep down, Ethan knew he had lost something far more meaningful than he cared to admit. After leaving Ethan, Grace discovered she was pregnant. The news was a whirlwind of emotions, both a joyous revelation and a daunting challenge. Becoming a single mother was never part of Grace's plan, but she resolved to face her new reality with resilience and strength. When Grace gave birth to 3 sons, Nathan, Lucas, and Caleb, her life transformed completely. Her days became a blur of crying infants, late-night feedings, and endless sleepless nights. Yet, amidst the chaos, Grace discovered a newfound purpose: to give her sons the best life she could provide. To support her family, Grace juggled multiple jobs, from waitressing at a cafe to creating commissioned artwork. Though she had to put her dreams of becoming a renowned artist on hold, she refused to let bitterness consume her. Instead, she poured her emotions into her paintings, creating works that resonated with stories of strength and love. Over time, her artwork gained modest recognition in the local art community. Nathan, Lucas, and Caleb grew up in a home that, while modest, was filled with warmth and love. Grace taught her sons to value themselves and never define their worth by someone else's presence or absence. As they grew older, the inevitable questions about their father began to arise. Grace chose to remain quiet, convincing herself that she could fulfill the role of both parents. Despite the hardships, Grace never regretted her choice. She was proud of the life she had built and believed in her heart that Ethan no longer had a place in their lives. Years had passed since Grace walked away from Ethan. She had built a stable life for herself and her 3 sons. One day, an ornate gilded envelope arrived in the mail, its elegant lettering bearing the name of the sender, Ethan Carter. Inside was an invitation to his upcoming wedding with Vanessa Monroe, a prominent figure in high society. Grace sat in silence as she read the invitation, a storm of emotions coursing through her. Shock, anger, and sadness all at once. It was clear that Ethan hadn't sent the invitation as an olive branch or an expression of regret. To Grace, it felt like a calculated move, a way for Ethan to flaunt his success and remind her of how far he had come since their breakup. But Grace wasn't the same woman Ethan had left behind. As she watched her 3 sons, Nathan, Lucas, and Caleb, playing in the living room, she felt the strength she had cultivated over the years. This wasn't just about Ethan. Her children deserved to know the truth about their father, and Ethan needed to face the reality he had long ignored. For days, Grace wrestled with the decision. Part of her wanted to throw the invitation away and move on, but in the end, she chose to attend, not to cause trouble, nor to seek revenge, but to finally confront the past and give her sons the answers they deserved. Grace carefully selected an elegant yet understated dress, one that exuded quiet confidence. She also prepared her sons for the occasion, explaining in simple terms that they would be attending a grand event and meeting an old acquaintance. Innocent and excited, Nathan, Lucas, and Caleb were blissfully unaware of the deeper significance of the day. Grace wasn't seeking conflict, but she was determined to ensure that Ethan confronted the truth. She knew this encounter would mark a turning point, not just for her, but for her children and for Ethan himself. Ethan Carter's wedding to Vanessa Monroe was the event of the season, held at a luxurious estate where every detail exuded opulence. Imported flowers adorned the sprawling gardens, crystal chandeliers sparkled from grand tents, and tables were set with the finest china. Ethan, dressed in an expensive tailored suit, prepared to celebrate what he believed to be the pinnacle of his success. But when Grace walked into the hall with her 3 sons, all eyes immediately turned to them. Grace, dressed in an elegant gown, carried herself with quiet confidence, while Nathan, Lucas, and Caleb held her hands, their bright eyes filled with curiosity. The resemblance between the boys and Ethan was unmistakable, freezing the room in stunned silence. Whispers rippled through the crowd. They look just like Ethan. At the front of the room, Ethan stood frozen as he saw Grace and the three boys. He couldn't tear his eyes away. Three young faces with sharp features and piercing blue eyes that mirrored his own. The carefully constructed world he had built suddenly felt fragile and exposed. Grace walked forward, each step deliberate and steady. The crowd held its breath, watching the scene unfold. Standing before Ethan, Grace lifted her head, her expression calm yet resolute. "Hello, Ethan," she said, her voice steady but firm. "It's been a long time." Nathan, Lucas, and Caleb looked up at Ethan with innocent curiosity, unaware of the gravity of the moment. Ethan, a man who thrived under pressure, found himself paralyzed, unable to respond. Avenza, who had been chatting with guests, noticed Ethan's reaction and turned to see what had captured his attention. Her smile faded as her gaze landed on Grace and the boys. She approached Ethan, her voice a sharp whisper. "Who are they? What is this about?" Ethan didn't answer. He couldn't. For the first time, he was face to face with the truth he had spent years avoiding. The atmosphere in the wedding hall grew tense as Ethan faced Grace and the three boys he had never known existed. Grace stood before him with quiet determination, while Nathan, Lucas, and Caleb clung to her hands, their wide eyes scanning the lavish surroundings. Ethan couldn't tear his gaze away from the boys. Their piercing blue eyes, sharp features, and even their mannerisms were a striking reflection of himself. His heart clenched as he realized the truth. These weren't strangers. They were his sons. Vanessa, standing beside Ethan, grabbed his arm and hissed, her tone sharp and accusatory. "Ethan, what is going on? Did you know about this? Who are those children?" Grace, maintaining her composure, answered calmly. "These are Nathan, Lucas, and Caleb, Ethan's sons. We broke up before I knew I was pregnant, and I've raised them on my own ever since." The weight of her words crashed over Ethan like a tidal wave. He stammered, "Grace, why didn't you tell me? Why now?" Grace met his gaze, her voice steady. "Because they deserve to know their father. And you deserve to know what you left behind." Vanessa, livid with embarrassment and anger, demanded, "Ethan, this is our wedding day. Are you seriously going to let this ruin everything we've built?" Ethan didn't respond immediately, torn between guilt, regret, and confusion. His carefully curated world, built on the foundation of success and perfection, had suddenly crumbled. He was no longer the man in control. He was a father confronted with his own failures. Ethan took a deep breath and turned to Vanessa. "Vanessa, I'm sorry," he said, his voice laden with emotion. "I can't go through with this wedding. I need time to think about everything." Vanessa's eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you serious, Ethan? You're abandoning me in front of everyone? For her and those kids you didn't even know existed?" Ethan met her gaze, conflicted but resolute. "I didn't know, Vanessa, but now that I do, I can't ignore it. I need to understand what I missed and what I lost." Vanessa let out a bitter laugh, releasing his arm. "Fine, Ethan, you've made your choice." She turned on her heel, her white dress billowing behind her as she stormed out of the hall, leaving stunned guests in her wake. Ethan stood there, his world in pieces, yet filled with a newfound determination. He turned to Grace. "Grace, I've made so many mistakes. I can't undo the past, but I want to make things right. I want to be a father to our sons, and I want to try to be with you again. Please, give me a chance." Grace hesitated, her expression guarded. "Ethan, this isn't just about you. It's about our boys, and they come first. Words mean nothing without action." "I understand," Ethan said, his voice unwavering. "I'll prove it to you, one step at a time." After the canceled wedding, Ethan knew he had to back up his words with actions. He began his journey to become part of Nathan, Lucas, and Caleb's lives while earning Grace's trust once more. At first, the boys were hesitant around him. They saw him as a stranger rather than a father, but Ethan was determined to break through that barrier. He started by learning about their individual interests and personalities. Ethan showed up for everything: school pickups, weekend soccer games, and even simple family dinners. He spent hours helping Lucas fix a broken toy car, played chess with Caleb, and sat listening intently as Nathan passionately explained his favorite books. Gradually, the boys warmed up to him. The turning point came one evening when Nathan struggled with a difficult math problem. "Dad, can you help me?" he asked tentatively. Ethan froze for a moment, the word dad hitting him like a wave of emotion. He smiled softly and said, "Of course, son." From that moment on, all three boys began calling him Dad, a title Ethan cherished deeply. For Grace, watching Ethan integrate into their lives was surprising. She had assumed he might make a few efforts out of guilt, but his consistent presence and genuine affection for the boys told a different story. He wasn't just fulfilling an obligation, he was truly invested. Beyond connecting with the boys, Ethan focused on mending his relationship with Grace. He frequently visited her art studio, not just to admire her work, but to encourage her to pursue her dreams. "Grace," he said one day, "I want to be the man who supports you, just like you once supported me. I was wrong to overlook your dreams before, but I see them now. I see you." Through thoughtful gestures, patience, and unwavering dedication, Ethan slowly began to rebuild Grace's trust. While she remained cautious, Grace couldn't deny the joy Ethan brought back into her family's life. Piece by piece, her walls began to crumble, and she found herself opening her heart again. Over time, Ethan's consistent efforts began to pay off. He had become an integral part of Nathan, Lucas, and Caleb's lives. The boys, who were once cautious around him, now saw him as their father in every sense of the word. One evening, while Ethan was helping Lucas solve a tricky math problem, the boy hesitated before saying, "Dad, can you help me with this part?" Ethan froze, the word dad sinking deep into his heart. Fighting back tears, he smiled warmly and replied, "Of course, son." From that day forward, the boys started calling him Dad, a title that meant more to Ethan than any accolade he had ever received. For Grace, watching this transformation was both heartwarming and humbling. She had never imagined that Ethan could step into the role of a devoted father so naturally. His patience and genuine care for their boys spoke volumes. She also noticed how he made a conscious effort to include her in every decision, every family moment, showing her that he valued her just as much as he valued their children. One afternoon, while sitting in the park watching the boys play, Ethan turned to Grace. "I know I hurt you in the past," he said softly, "but I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. You gave me a family, a reason to truly live. I hope you'll give me one more chance, not just as their father, but as someone who still loves you deeply." Grace looked at him, her emotions swirling. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, the man who had changed so much from the one she had once known. Finally, she gave a small nod. "Ethan, we can try again, but this time you have to prove that you're here to stay, for me and for them." Ethan's face lit up with gratitude. "I promise, Grace. This time, I won't let you down." Weeks later, Ethan planned a family picnic on a lush, green hill under the warm summer sun. Grace and the boys helped pack sandwiches and fruit, while Ethan prepared a large blanket for them to sit on. As they sat together on the grass, laughter filled the air. Nathan, Lucas, and Caleb ran after butterflies, their voices echoing across the hill. Grace leaned against Ethan, watching the boys play. "You know," Ethan said, his voice soft, "I've spent my life chasing success, but this is everything I ever needed." Grace smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "Family," she replied. Ethan nodded, watching the boys as the golden rays of the setting sun bathed the scene in warmth. "Yes, family." As the sun dipped below the horizon, the reunited family sat together, sharing stories, laughter, and the peace of a new beginning.